thank you all for taking the time on such a cold morning to come and attend our inaugural and sold-out Women in Leadership and Philanthropy panel discussion. We're really excited to celebrate International Women's Day with such an incredible group. International Women's Day is a global day celebrating the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women, and that is exactly why we're here today. Today's event is an opportunity to showcase the power of women's voices and their actions as leaders and philanthropists in our community. Today would not have been possible without the support of TD for sponsoring today's event, but also for their ongoing and generous support of our hospital. As you may know, TD has been at the forefront on discussing women's philanthropy as demonstrated through the TD paper entitled Time, Talent, and Treasure, Canadian Women and Philanthropy. As a charitable organization, Brant Hospital Foundation has benefited greatly from the time, talent, and treasure for members of our community, many of whom are in this room today. We've seen firsthand the transformation that can occur when volunteers, leaders, advocates, philanthropists all come together with a shared passion for a common purpose. In August of 2017, the Michael E. Chin and Family Patient Tower was opened, and it celebrated a milestone for healthcare in Burlington. That would not have been possible without the support of the women who were leaders and volunteers and donors in our campaign, as well as everyone who came together as a community. It is now my honor to introduce our esteemed panel. I'd like to start with, to my far left, Cheryl Williams. Cheryl is the Executive Vice President of Patient Care Services and Chief Nursing Executive at Brant Hospital. She is responsible for providing strategic direction and oversight to clinical and clinical support programs, service programs. Cheryl is actively involved in hospital redevelopment and works on leading the clinical services transition plan and growth strategy at Brant. She does a lot at Brant Hospital, needless to say. To her left is Marianne Meed Ward. Marianne serves as the mayor of our great city of Burlington. Prior to being elected to the City Council in 2010, Marianne had an extensive career as a print and broadcast journalist and was a leader in her community as a founder of Save Our Waterfront, vice chair of the Burlington Transit Advisory Committee, and founding member of Burlington Green Environmental Association. Next, and beside Marianne, we have Rosanne Longo. Growing up in the family business, Rosanne has a natural passion for food. As Longo's spokesperson, her purpose is to connect and inspire healthy families through shared values and a love of good food. As chair of the Longo's Family Charitable Foundation, Rosanne works closely with charitable partners and community leaders to build and nurture innovative programs that help build stronger communities. To Rosanne's left is Lisa Lisson. Lisa is the president of FedEx Canada and leads a team of over 6,000 employees coast to coast, specializing in international and domestic courier solutions. Lisa's focus on service excellence and community engagement has given FedEx a place among the 20 most respected brands in Canada. She's been awarded a Diamond Jubilee Medal in recognition of her achievements and was inducted into the Women's Executive Network Top 100 Most Powerful Women Hall of Fame in 2015. Lisa sits on the boards of the Business Council of Canada and Sick Kids Foundation. She also wrote a powerful memoir entitled Resilience, which all of you will be going home with a copy of today. Thank you, Lisa. Beside Lisa is Anna Iacobelli. As the Senior Vice President of Metro West Region for TD Bank Group, Anna is responsible for leadership of all the region's branches and banking operations from Vaughan to Niagara, including strategic direction and positioning for future growth. Anna sits on the board for TD's Friends of the Environment Foundation, and she is vice chair of the Brant Hospital Foundation. Recently, she chaired the United campaign in London, which achieved its goal of $9.1 million. And is also actively involved with TD's Women in Leadership initiatives. And finally, we are very fortunate to have Joanne Ryan as our moderator today. Joanne is just behind me. Joanne leads the Philanthropic Advisory Services team within Wealth Advisory Services at TD Wealth. She is the Executive Director and Architect of the Private Giving Foundation, the first donor-advised fund program launched by a financial institution in Canada. Joanne helps clients to develop strategies incorporating philanthropy in their overall financial and estate planning. So we have assembled an incredible group of women here today, and I want to thank everyone for being on our panel, as well for all of you for being here today and part of this discussion. As I mentioned, Joanne will moderate the conversation. We'll also invite questions from the audience.
It's a pleasure to be here, moderating a panel on women in philanthropy, especially so close to International Women's Day. And we've been very pleased to do a lot of research around women in philanthropy. We know that women play a huge role in giving. They're growing in wealth. We talk in the financial services sector about the intergenerational wealth transfer. And women outlive men, so they often inherit twice, both from parents as well as from a spouse or a partner. But it's not just the wealth transfer. Women are growing in entrepreneurship. We are slowly closing the wage gap. And women care and they want to give back. And they do approach philanthropy very differently than men. So we'd be happy to share our research with you if you haven't already seen it. And we're finding it's more and more important now to incorporate philanthropy as part of financial and estate plans. So today we have fantastic women leaders, leaders in business, leaders in philanthropy, who are going to share some of their insights with us. And I think I'm going to start with Lisa. As you heard, you're all getting a fantastic book as you leave called Resilience. And it's a great book. I downloaded it as soon as I met Lisa or spoke to her on the phone. It's Lisa's personal story. It talks about, Lisa, it talks about your incredible rise to be president and CEO of FedEx, your leadership in the charitable sector, widowed mother of 4 young children, and you've accomplished unbelievable success. So I know we're all going to read the book, but can you just give us a little bit of a Reader's Digest version of your story?
Oh, I'd be happy to. First of all, it's a thrill to be here, and thank you all for coming. So basically, I'm a Burlington resident, and I grew up here, went to high school. I met my high school sweetheart, Patrick, and we went all through high school and all through university together. And after I finished university, I decided to go and work for FedEx. I think culture is very important in a company, and it's always important to pick a company that has a fantastic culture, which FedEx does. Started there, and he was doing well in his career. We were having 4 children and working our way up, and we were coming back from our cottage in Muskoka and having a glass of wine, and he was having this profound moment about how grateful he was for our life, and he was getting very deep with me, and he was a deep person, but he was getting very deep with me. And we went to bed that night, and I hear a thump in the middle of the night, and for those of us that are moms, we have bionic hearing, especially I tell my 17-year-old daughter that right now when she's past her curfew, I can hear you. And unfortunately, that thump was inside my room, and my husband had suffered a heart attack. And our kids were 9, 7, 5, and 3 at the time. And he was rushed down here to this fantastic hospital that we were fortunate enough to have in our community. And I found out he had suffered a massive heart attack. And the doctors had said, you know, we may need to think about letting him go because he was deprived without oxygen for quite some time. And you know, he was 38 years old, and he was the love of my life. And I just said, I understand there'd be a long journey ahead. I just have one question. Do miracles happen in this hospital, or any hospital for that matter? And the answer is yes. Miracles do happen. I said, he's 38 years old. I need to know if I'm going to get my miracle. And so for the next 2 years, I kept him alive in a vegetative state, hoping for a miracle. I brought him home every Sunday. He couldn't see, hear, or speak, but we had him there, and this was my new normal. Unfortunately, we did not get the miracle we were hoping for, and 2 years after he had his heart attack, he passed away peacefully in my arms. And at that point, I really had a turning point in my life of how to handle this. And it was my wonderful, sweet mummy who set me on my path to resilience, who is right here, Susie Federchuk. And she said to me the words that set me on learning about resilience, which is, she said, baby, life is not about what happens to you. It's about what you choose to do with what happens. And when life hits us in the gut, for whatever reason, we have a choice, how we respond to it. And I realized that we can choose our attitude every single morning when we wake up, like we choose our outfit. It's something we can control. So I set on a path to resilience, and I was pleased to find out that resilience is not something you're born with. It's a muscle that we all can strengthen. So our ability in life, whether we want to sink or swim, comes down to our ability to learn. So I set myself on that path, and then 1 year after he passed away, I got a call from Memphis saying, congratulations. And I said, for what? They said, you're now the new president of FedEx Canada. And no man would have said what I said. I said, well, aren't you going to interview me? Here they are offering me the friggin' job. I'm like, and that was 8 years ago. So I've been with FedEx for 27 years. I've been in this job for 8 years. And I wrote this book to share my thoughts about what I went through to help others, because we're not alone in this, the journey that we're on and what we're hit with. But I learned that resilience is something that is a mindset, and that we can learn resilience and bounce back stronger than when we started, which is the definition of resilience, by how we approach life and by paying attention to our thoughts and our mind, because that's the one thing we can control. And if we say, I've got this, even though we may not know how, we will set ourselves on a path to figuring it out versus saying, I can't do this. Our thoughts create our behaviors, and it's something very important that we all need to remember every single day.
Wow, quite a story. Thank you. There's lots of great advice in your book, and I won't share it all with you, but there was one thing that really struck me, is your ability to compartmentalize, which you must have had to do in order to, climb the ladders of FedEx with everything that you were facing with. So how do we learn, with all this stuff going on, how do you learn to compartmentalize? Well,
that's a really good question. It also helped me to, and it's also part of resilient people, they believe greater days are ahead and brighter days when they're not sure how. They believe in saying, I've got this. But what I also found is that we talk about mindfulness, and it's about the power of living in the true moment. And how I had to compartmentalize to get through my profound grief was this. For whatever reason, our minds want to do two things. They either want to live in the past about things that, oh, woe is me and this and that, or if we're not living in the past, our minds are then racing to the future. And one of my favorite quotes by Joan Mayer is this: worrying about the future is a down payment on a problem we may never have. So I had to realize that I can't control the past because I'm not going that way, and I'm not going to worry about the future because it's complete wasted energy. So when you're dealing with life forces outside of your life that you have a hard time control, what you can control are the 24 hours in front of you. Each day that we wake up is a gift. And no matter what happened yesterday, we have to say, if I cannot fix the past, I have to let it go. And I have to focus on 24 hours in front of me. Each new day is a gift, and I'm going to make the most of it. And I live by that every day. And I tell my children that. I tell my kids this. My most 3 favorite words after I love you are let it go. So if you cannot control something in your past, you have to let it go, and you focus on what you can control, which is 24 hours in front of you, and your minds and thoughts saying, I've got this. Today is going to be a great day.
That's great advice. So thank you. Thank you. We'll try to... advice we should all live with every day. I'm going to move to Anna. You've had many roles at TD in many different areas. Can you just comment on your career progression at TD? What factors have contributed towards your success? And also, of course, how did you become involved with Joseph Brant?
So where should I start?
Maybe just a little bit about your career at TD.
Yeah, so it's great to see some of my colleagues here in the room today, and actually some of my partners that I've dealt with as well. So thank you very much for coming out. So I'm in my 29th year at TD. I'm actually a Burlington resident as well, born and raised here, and so there's people in this room that I went to high school with and grade school, and so I think it's fantastic. But when I joined TD, I joined in the commercial bank, and so I had an opportunity to work with small businesses. And then from there, if any of you, the folks that work for TD, they know that there's always opportunities if you're willing to take the risks to do some of these opportunities. And so I grew up in the business bank, and then I did a bunch of different roles. I became a district vice president where I led a big district, and then the opportunity came for me to set up call centers in India. And so I shared this story yesterday with a group of colleagues in Hamilton. And that was a risk I took because I knew nothing about call centers and I knew nothing about India other than I managed Brampton district, and so I kind of knew the culture a little bit, so I knew some of the people. A job I did, I hated it, but I learned a ton because what I learned at that time is that I'm way better managing large teams than managing through people. And so then from that, I started running call centers, and so I spent 6 years in call centers, which was fantastic. And then I had the opportunity to run a large region in London, Ontario, so hence my involvement in United Way. And so my region there was Windsor to Niagara. I still lived here in Burlington. I spent half my week in London, and then I spent my time in Burlington. And so I think what I did there was I just focused on my strengths. My strengths were leading big people and leading change and moving people forward and developing them. So I think that's what's allowed me the opportunity to have some different roles within TD. So why I joined Joseph Brant Hospital and kind of got involved within the board. Born at this hospital a long time ago. I live across the street from the hospital. And then my dad passed away in 2016 at this hospital. And that's when I thought, you know what, I need to get involved now. I was moving back from London to spend my time here in Burlington. And so I got actively involved. And so this year I'm the vice chair, and next year I will be the chair.
Oh, great. Great.
Mm-hmm. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
So when we think of giving, it's time, treasure, and talent. And sometimes we're able to give more money than time, sometimes more time than money. But do you think it's important to give where you live?
1000%.
Yes.
I do. It's the community where we are. For many of us, if we live here, this will be the hospital that we actually use and that we will go to for tests or for our family members. And so I think it's very, very important. And again, it's a shout out to my colleagues, because I know many of them give to this hospital or give to the community because they live here and they're raising their families here.
Great. And there's some great tax incentives for giving, even though tax is not the #1 motivator. But we actually, in Canada, have one of the most generous tax incentives for charitable giving compared to other countries. And so when we talk to our clients about it, we basically say, you have a choice, because if you have any income or any wealth in Canada, your tax dollars or your social capital will go to Ottawa. So you can say, I like the way they're spending my money, I'm good. Or you can say, I'd like to take some of that back in the form of tax credits available for charitable giving and allocate them to things that you personally care about. And so we encourage all of our clients to consider putting together a philanthropic plan that reflects your values, that's tax efficient. There are 86,000 charities in Canada. They're all asking or knocking at our doors. So the more focused you are with a strategic plan, the greater impact you're going to actually have. So Rosanne, I love Longos. They have saved my life so many times when it's the end of the day and my husband says, what's for dinner? And I say, I have no idea, but I'm going to go to Longos because luckily we now have 2 Longos within the PATH system in Toronto, which has been a godsend. Thank you. And the company is great. I will just share one more Longo story. Is when the Longos first opened in my neighborhood in Leaside, I was thrilled and I went shopping and I didn't check the weather. And a torrential downpour happened as I was shopping and my car was parked in the farthest spot possible. And I was sort of looking outside thinking, what am I going to do? And miraculously, a Longo's employee showed up beside me with a big umbrella and asked if he could walk me to my car. And like, how great is that? So your family is very generous, giving both through the business and through the Longo's Foundation. It sort of looks like the philanthropy is intertwined in the business. So tell me how you decide which causes you want to support. And then once you've done that also, what's your connection to this hospital, to Joseph Brant?
Our giving is intertwined, corporate giving and the foundation, because my dad and his 2 brothers, right from the beginnings in 1956, always felt it was important to give back to the communities, even though they had nothing to give back then. So they would help in any small way that they could. If it was a family in need, they had a fire at their home, they'd hear through the local church, they'd donate some food or a fruit basket or something. And then as our company grew, and we were able to give in more impactful ways, we also gave through our Family Charitable Foundation, which we started in 1998. But it's important to be, for our stores, so giving corporately and at the local community level, it's important for our stores, the store managers and the team members there, to be connected to the communities. We do have some guidelines and filters we like for the corporate. It's disease prevention and education, child and youth, and of course food aid and nutrition. It all relates back to food. I mean, that's what we do. And for the foundation, we have complementary but slightly more focused giving, because we can give in more impactful ways, and we try to have make a difference in a different way through the foundation. Now, how we became involved with Joseph Brant, I grew up in Burlington, and we've had a store here for almost 50 years. I think it's 47 years when we started on Plains Road. And my Uncle Joe and his wife we were involved with Joseph Brant, but they started doing hospital visits at Christmas time and visiting patients who weren't able to come home at Christmas. And sometimes my Uncle Joe, he was a little joker and everything, he would dress up as Santa Claus, and they would come and they would go out on their own and buy gifts and just spread joy through the hospital and singing songs. And that continues to today, where my aunt still comes with a team from Longo's and some of her family members. And as we grew over this 47 years, we were giving to Joe Brant through the different charitable events that you run, the bed races and the galas and stuff like that. But when the expansion came about and we were in a position to give in a more impactful way, you know, we stepped up and gave a sizable donation. And we're just recently about to announce a new donation to the hospital. So that's how we were involved in Joe Brant. My brother and sister were born there.
Great. Great. So you must get a lot of requests for funding, and how difficult is it to say no?
It's very difficult to say no. There's so many worthwhile organizations out there, so that's why it's helpful for us, for the store managers at store level. They make the decision because they're connected to their communities and the people who shop at our stores. And from the foundation side, because we're so focused, we have a board of trustees. We do have some guidelines that line up with our values. We're focused on emerging health research and also child and youth leadership development initiatives. So we're very focused, and then the emerging health research, we're focused right now on immunotherapy and mental health. So everything comes down to having those filters, those granting guidelines, and it just helps us to say no in a, I guess, more thoughtful way, purposeful way. Yeah.
So having a strategic philanthropic plan, it allows you to have a greater impact, but also you can screen out the ones that really don't fit with what you've decided is important to your organization, to your family. So thank you. So Marianne, congratulations on your election win. And it's been decades since there's been a female mayor in Burlington. So what motivated you to run for mayor, and why did you transition, I'm curious, from journalism into politics?
Well, great question, and thanks to all of you for being here this morning. I'm delighted to be among such amazing women up on this panel, and it was exciting for me when I got invited to be here because I'm really interested in what all of you have to say. We learn from each other, and so I'm just thrilled to be a part of this. The long answer short is that as a journalist, I spent 22 years writing about what other people were doing. I spent 11 years as a columnist and a panelist on television, radio, talking about what other people were doing and suggesting what they should be doing and telling them what they should be doing. And at a certain point in my life, I just realized that I wanted to be the one making the decisions instead of telling other people what to do. I'm a doer and have always been a doer, and so I made the decision to run in 2006 for the first time for a city council seat, and I lost. But I loved talking to people. I loved learning about the issues and finding out what was happening in the community. And so I had an opportunity in 2007 to run provincially. So I did, and I lost. But I realized that it was something I really wanted to do because the issues that I cared about, that I would write about, had talked about, had interviewed people about for 20 some odd years were issues that really mattered to me and to my heart, and I wanted to be involved in making my community a better place for our family, my husband and my three children, our three children. So in 2010, there was another municipal election. And I ran again, and I won. And I know that the previous 2 elections set me up for that success. I didn't know anything about running for politics. I had never worked on a campaign. I had never been one of those people saying, I want to be a politician when I grow up. I don't know if anybody actually does say that, but I certainly didn't. And so I knew nothing in 2006. And so both of those elections gave me the experience of a campaign. It introduced me to the issues, to the people in the community, helped to build my name recognition. And so I don't look at those as failures. I look at those as stepping stones towards success that got me here today. I'll also note that I've always run against incumbents, people who had the job. And people told me that that was really hard to do, and it is. I lost twice against incumbents. And I was also advised at various points to, well, wait till they give up the seat. And it was usually, I was running usually in every case against a man. So it was wait till he's done with it. So on International Women's Day, the day before, don't do that. When you see something a way that you can serve, you go for that. Don't wait till somebody else is finished with something that you think you can do and do better. And so, so I've always run against incumbents, except the one time in 2014 when I was the incumbent. And in both elections, the 2010 and 2014, not only did I win against an incumbent the first time, I won with a resounding majority both times. So those earlier experiences really positioned me for that success. And then you fast forward to 2018 and making the decision about what to do next. I loved serving as the Ward 2 councillor in downtown, representing downtown. I saw myself doing that for a very long time. But there were things that were happening in the city that the current or the previous council, decisions that they were making that I simply thought were taking the city in a wrong direction. And so I had a choice. I can keep my safe seat. People told me, that's yours until you're done with it. And actually that's not true. That's up to you folks, the voters. But that was the message, is that people feel you're doing a great job, it's your seat. Why would you put that on the line? Why would you put that safe seat on the line? And I said, because life isn't about being safe. For me personally, it's about serving. It's about doing, the reason I went into this was to make the city a better place. And if I feel that the decisions being made are taking us in a direction we shouldn't be going, then I need to do something about it. And I am willing to put my safe seat on the line. And I described it to people when I first made the decision to run, like jumping off a cliff. And you don't know what's going to happen. You have to step off that cliff. And I found my parachute. And my parachute was the community and the people that rallied and said, we believe what you believe. We think there's a better way. And I would like to just take a little moment to acknowledge 2 of my awesome women colleagues that are here with me today. Lisa Kearns, who is the new Ward 2 councillor for downtown. Shauna Stolte, who is the Ward 4 councillor. We have amazing, amazing women, and we have the highest number of women on council ever in Burlington's history, 3 out of the 7. Still not a majority, but good. But we have a long way to go in Canada. 18% of women are mayors in our country, 18. We haven't had a woman in the mayor's chair in Burlington in a generation, 40 years. The first and the last one was Mary Monroe in 1977, and I will say she was a mentor to me for sure. So I think I answered the question.
You did.
Did I cover it all?
And thank you. Just one quick question before we move on. The election was nasty.
Oh, yes.
And there were a number of personal attacks against you. And everything from you can't do math to all kinds of interesting things. So I'm just curious, what strategies did you employ to simply ignore these, forge ahead? You have thick skin. Like, what do you do when you're just being attacked like that?
So it's a great question, and we had it was kind of coming from a whole bunch of different directions. We had this firm that was hired in Toronto, very expensive, high-powered firm. We estimate, people that know this stuff estimate that there were tens of thousands of dollars that were spent trying to stop my campaign, and it was directed exclusively to me. The issue was one of the biggest issues in this campaign was development. And it was taking things that I had said, allegedly said as a journalist 20 some odd years ago, twisting them, putting words in my mouth. There was an individual, that was one stream of negativity. There were ads all over Facebook, Instagram, all over social media the couple of weeks leading up to the campaign, just completely trying to smear my reputation. There was an individual who registered as a candidate in Ward 3 for the sole purpose of flyering the entire community, the entire city, with a checklist of the male incumbent with all the green check marks and myself with all the red X's. And yes, one of my apparent lack of attributes is that I'm not good at math. I don't know where that came from, but and that I was ambitious. And that I was aggressive. You know, words that get applied almost exclusively to women only because we dare to have an opinion and we dare to say it out loud. That's it. That's it. So we took the approach in our campaign that we were going to focus on the issues. So we did two things. We called it out, because I think you have to call it out. And that was even a choice, because when women say this is unacceptable behavior, what we're often tagged with is, oh, can't you take it? Can't play with the big boys? Well, politics is a blood sport. You know what you were getting into. All of that stuff, right? And I say, yeah, I was a journalist for 22 years. I know what it's like to be in the public eye and have people not happy with me. And my columns in the broadcast went nationally. I had people from actually overseas sometimes sending me interesting mail. But why do we accept that? So that was our response, is I can take it. That's beside the point. This is not acceptable. It's not acceptable in a democracy. It's not acceptable to treat anybody this way. So this is bad behavior. It's wrong. It's got to stop. And here's all the things that I care about. Here's what we're running on. And that was it. We didn't engage in the negativity. We didn't respond to it. We didn't talk about the...
didn't attack back.
Did not attack back. And at the end of the day, people... I was so proud of Burlington residents. They said, not in my town. This is not going to influence our election. Make it stop. And we saw, every time a negative ad went out, we saw a bump in support. So proud of the community for that.
Don't they say when you go low, you go high?
Yeah.
That's what we did. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Marianne. I'm going to move to Cheryl. You have a really, really big, important job. But there was a big announcement about healthcare last week. There's going to be a very big overhaul in Ontario with a number of organizations merging. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so I think it was last week that Minister Elliott announced new legislation that is looking to bring together some of the agencies that are overseeing healthcare in Ontario. And this new vision for this integrated system is called Ontario Health. And part of that provincial vision is also creating local integrated care delivery systems. So this is a huge transformation, and it is taking agencies, some of our very renowned agencies like Health Quality Ontario and Cancer Care Ontario, and integrating them together into a single entity. And the purpose behind this is really about trying to create an integrated approach to how we plan and provide service across the province, and how we support our care providers in being able to deliver care. So it is a major transformation, but I'm really excited about where this direction may potentially go. I think for those of you who've ever had experience in the healthcare system, I think we all know that it is a highly regulated, complex environment, and historically, the various sectors and the various parts of the healthcare system have really developed their regulations in separate ways. So it's been a bit of an isolated approach to planning. And what happens as a result of that, as individuals try to move across the various parts of the system, moving from primary care into acute care, into home care, and into the long-term care sector, I think that people find that this system is very hard to navigate and that there are risks in those transitions and that patients have the potential of falling through the cracks at those points in time. So what we believe is really exciting about the vision is that it's really all about integration. What I can tell you about too is that here in Burlington, over the past 5 years, we've all been recognizing and acknowledging that these gaps exist. And we have been working already to try to find ways to bridge these gaps and to start the integration conversations with our partners. So primary care, our home care teams, many of our social service agencies, as well as the City of Burlington, as well as the region of Halton, we've been already meeting together and planning. And we actually have now what we call an anchor table in Burlington, where all of these leaders of these systems come together to talk about what kind of programs and services do we need, and how can we integrate all of the resources that we have to provide a better experience for patients, and that so that people don't fall through the cracks. And what we know is that when we do this, we provide better outcomes, we provide better experience, and there's great value in the system when we do that. And so these programs already exist. Some of the examples of what I'm talking about are, we've got an Inspired program, we've got a Families First program in Burlington, we've got a program for mental health called FAST. And so all of these are integrated programs, they're innovative programs, and we believe that we're already doing many of the things that the vision that the minister has for healthcare in Ontario are already aligned to. So we're very excited and we're hopeful that this will bring forward a transformation and an integration of services that everybody will feel.
So it's good news.
It is good news.
That's great, okay. One more question is that when we were doing our women focus groups for our Women in Philanthropy reports, I remember one particularly, we had a woman that was a big supporter of the hospital foundation, and then we had another woman saying, no, you don't need to support the hospital, the government does that through government funding. So obviously government funding is not enough, but I don't know if it's clear about where is the gap. What does the government fund, and where's the gap, and where do we need to step forward as donors and philanthropists?
Right. So yes, certainly the government does fund a lot of healthcare, and what they fund are the operations of healthcare. What we do not receive direct funding for are all the capital requirements. So I'll talk for a minute, what does that really mean? So for us at the hospital, it means things like furniture. So, overbed tables, recliner chairs for patients, not covered under the current funding formula. Other things like equipment, things ranging from vital signs monitors right through to MRIs are also capital items that we have to try to find ways to be able to fund and support outside of the traditional operating dollars that we receive from the ministry. IT is also another area. So healthcare is really emerging from a digital perspective. I would say we're behind most other industries in terms of our use of technology in the way we provide care and the way that we communicate with the people who we serve. So IT software, as an example, to allow us to move towards an electronic medical record, not covered by the operational dollars that we receive from the government. And I think the last thing that I want to highlight is research. So Joseph Brant is a community teaching hospital. We're affiliated with McMaster University, and we do have a lot of applied research underway. We also are a hub here in Burlington of innovative service delivery models. And so we would really like to be able to showcase and scale and spread these great innovations that we know are delivering great care through those integrated partnerships that I've already talked about. In order for us to do that, we need to have research. We need to have evidence that these programs are making this positive difference. So those research dollars, again, are something not supported, and that's something also that we look to support from generous donors to help us with that. The other piece of that with the donations, and especially for research, when we have dollars to support research, it really does help us attract, recruit, and retain some of the most expert clinicians in the field. So being able to have great tools and resources and to have access to research dollars really does help us support the best clinicians at Joseph Brant.
Great, thank you. And I think we chatted on the phone, if somebody supports an MRI machine or gives a donation for an MRI machine, how do we pay the operator?
So the hospital pays the operator.
Pays.
We have to use operating dollars. Never do we use foundation dollars to support the day-to-day operations of the hospital.
Okay, great, thank you. Back to Anna. So I know you mentor a lot of people at TD. You've been very involved in women in leadership. So how do you go about finding a mentor? And what advice would you have? And do you need more than one? And does it change throughout your career?
Yeah, so TD has a number of programs on mentoring, and so in some instances you're actually matched with an individual, and so we have a 6 and 6, we have a women in leadership, we'll do a triac type of mentoring. Most instances though, some of those work. I think the best type of mentoring is when you're at an event, you meet someone, you have this connection, and then you start to actually go for a coffee with them, you start to realize that that might be an area within the organization you want to work in, so you start to build that mentoring relationship. My 29 years, I've had a number of mentors, some I still keep in touch with and some that just kind of fall off as you go through. Right. But I think it's important. Your boss is your coach, but the mentor is the person you kind of pick up the phone with to say, okay, I screwed up, I don't know what to do, and they kind of can help guide you through that sort of thing and give you different types of advice.
And you've had mentors also through your career?
I have. I've had many, male and female, and some to this day that are no longer with the organization. I continue to keep in touch with them.
That's great. Mm-hmm. And Lisa, I know your book, you talk about your mentor, and then there's also your sponsor. And so there's a difference between a mentor and a sponsor. And I've been celebrating International Women's Day at a few events this week, and I heard somebody describe your sponsor as your public cheerleader.
Yes.
So if you could maybe talk about your mentor and your sponsor and how that's helped you throughout your career.
Absolutely. I wouldn't be here today without my mentors and my sponsors. I still have them today, and I rely upon them heavily. I agree with Anna. They can be more formal. I tell people, because it's hard to go out and ask someone, can you be my mentor? And here's what I tell, and I'm telling my daughters this as they're, one of my daughters interviewing downtown right now, is you go up to someone and say, can I please have 6 months of your time for just 30 minutes? Coffee, I'll send you the questions in advance, and I would just love to pick your brain, get your career book. Could you do that for me? And if the answer is no, you don't want them to be your mentor. Okay, so that's that. Also use networking events like this to have the mentors. We all know that we cannot, keep our problems inside. I know personally when I have an issue, just talking about it, even if I haven't solved the problem, I feel better. So I tell everyone, have a mentor, have a community, have a village that you can talk to. Don't keep things inside and don't feel you have to solve it alone. So that's what a mentor is. And I still have so many today, and I rely upon them heavily, and I give them all the credit for my career. What I also, just telling my daughters right now, we were talking about this week because it is International Women's Week, is a sponsor is different. So what a sponsor is a sponsor is your personal cheerleader. They're not your mentor. You don't go to them for problems. And here's a perfect example. When I was a managing director and I was reading about sponsorship back in the day, I went to someone senior in our company and I said, listen, I would love to be able to take on a special project. I'm ready to go above and beyond. I'm letting my intentions be known, which I also say is very important in your career. You have to drive your career, and you have to always let your intentions be known. So in terms of a sponsorship, I was saying, I'd like to move up in this company. I'd like to hopefully be the first Canadian female one day, but I would be willing to take on special projects. Would you be my sponsor? He said, I'm absolutely happy to do this. And then what he did for me is they were looking for a global lead to lead up our customer relationship management. Because I had met with him and asked him, I was ready to do this, ready to commit. He went down to Memphis, right up to our chairman of the board, still today, Fred Smith, and said, I've got someone in Canada that I think can lead our CRM project globally. That's what a sponsor is. He advocated for me, and everyone wanted this opportunity in Memphis. I got it, and I know that's instrumental because I got to present to Fred and our committee, and then about a year and a half later, I was promoted to vice president. So that's what a sponsor does, and it's so important to have both in your career, and you don't need to be shy about asking. When you say, I'd like to volunteer for a special project, they're waiting to assign people these things, and it sets you apart from the rest. That is why it's so important for women and for men to have both, and it's game-changing in your career, and we need to teach our younger generation the importance of both.
Great. And lots of good advice in your book. I know do more than your job is really a great piece of advice also. So thank you. Rosanne, in philanthropy now, we keep hearing the term impact measurement. How do you measure the impact of your giving? You don't just write a check to an organization and then trust that they're doing everything that they said they were going to do. But you don't want to hound them and harass them and create all kinds of administrative reporting. So how do you handle that with Longo's?
Well, it's important when we start working with an organization, and like I said earlier, we want to have impact. We want to make a difference. But at the same time, we want to let the organization do what they do best. We don't want to tie them up with resources and reporting back to us. So when we set up a gift with a project in mind, usually we're looking for something that's innovative and going to change things within an organization. And we want it to be sustainable as well. We'll set up what are the objectives of that project to begin with. So we're going to put some measurables against those objectives. And reporting can be anything from, we're not looking for quarterly because I think that's time, that's resource intensive. If it's biannually or annually is fine usually. It depends on the organization we're working with. And then we also anticipate sometimes the needs of the project change or the objectives change in the middle of it, and we're open to that as long as the money is being put to good use and there's not a big diversion from what the objectives are.
Right.
We don't want to tie up resources.
Yeah. And how are you engaging your kids to care about the community and about the business?
Mm-hmm. For my husband and I personally, since the kids were young, it was easy to involve them in events and charitable initiatives that Longo's was undertaking. So we'd bring them, they'd volunteer at Road Hockey to Conquer Cancer, or our golf tournament, or they pack bags at our Neighbor in Need bag assembly. So they've always been involved that way. But then from a personal level, when they were really young, we went to a charitable event and they had piggy banks that you could buy. And we bought one for each of them. They already had their own personal piggy bank at home. And we explained the concept of sorting your money, and any money they give, some of it goes into your piggy bank for spending or saving, and the other is for charitable. And then at the end of the year, they had all these coins, and they were really young, so you have to explain it in terms that kids can understand. It depends on their age and everything. But they emptied their piggy bank, they sorted and counted, and they decided what kind of charity and where they wanted to give to. And we drove over, handed them the coins like in a bag, and apologized for that, but it was important that at their age level that's what it was. They were giving thousands of dollars in their mind, right? And they were going to help an organization. So that's how we kind of started at a young age. And they just see through the work that my husband and I do it's how important it is to give back.
And how old are they now?
Now they're 19 and 17, and they're still involved with the volunteer initiatives.
That's great. So, Marianne, what are your biggest hopes for Burlington while in office, and what keeps you awake at night?
I'll start at the end. What keeps me awake is that I'll miss something, that something will slip through, some big issue that it wasn't on my radar, I didn't see it coming. There's so much coming at us all the time, and when you were talking earlier about the province, the provincial government, some of the announcements have been things that we don't agree with at the city. One of those was building into the Greenbelt. And as soon as that announcement came out, we reacted immediately and said, not in Burlington. We have vacant land for employment growth. We have lots of ways to attract and retain business, and we don't need to sacrifice the environment for the sake of business. We can do both, and we are doing both. And so we kind of have a standing watch at 4:45 every Friday afternoon to see what new announcements might be coming from the province. So. And regional government review is another huge issue. We don't control what this government might do in Burlington. And so those are some big issues that were not on my radar during the campaign, had no idea that those were the kinds of things that were coming down the pipeline. So that keeps me awake at night, is what's coming next, what are we gonna miss, how are we gonna respond? And of course you want the best for your community, and so you wanna succeed, and so even though I have high regard for failure as a stepping stone, I don't want to fail my community. I want to be able to be successful. And you know, development is a big issue downtown for certainly downtown, but also in neighborhoods across the community, and making sure there's a community vision for how we grow our city, making sure it's the best city that it can be. And that's my goal in the next 4 years, and making sure that community voice is heard, and fighting where we have to defend and to make sure that we get that good community planning. And if it means fighting at the tribunal, the new local planning appeal tribunal, we have to do that too. So one of the recent things we did yesterday is put a freeze on development downtown so that we can get a community vision, land some policies, do some study work. I'm very proud of the council for going in that direction, and we have a lot of work cut out for us, but it's a really important moment, and I can tell you the community's happy. Not everyone is, but that's okay.
Great. So we're running out of time. We could go on for a few hours. I'm just going to ask a couple of final questions. Anna, I've known you a number of years at TD, and if someone asked me to describe you, I would say high energy. And I think that's a really good thing, as opposed to couch potato. So where do you
Thank God.
where do you get this energy? Is it caffeine driven? Is there something secret that
A combination of many things, caffeine for sure. But like, again, I mentioned I have colleagues here in the room today. I get to work with fantastic people every day, and I love what I do. And so when you find something that you really love, you get really excited about it. It gets you energized. And I get not everybody loves their job. So if it's not the job component of it, then go find a hobby that you really love. And so I ran for a number of years here in the local community, running, I would say, not ran for anything. But it was
Just
great. It was fantastic. But you know, again, I think you feed off the people around you, and that creates your energy. And so I'm very fortunate.
Okay, great. Lisa, in your book, after everything you've accomplished, everything you were going through, I suddenly read you have 4 dogs, a cat, and a fish, and I thought, are you crazy?
I am crazy. And I've just rescued 3 bunnies, so it's, yeah. It's busy. It is busy, but, you know, it's, my 3rd daughter, you know, was talking about being a vet, but I just, the thing is, too, is that I have a soft spot for rescue animals and anything I can do, and I know some of my friends here in the room also feel the same way, so anything that we can do to help the local Humane Society, sign me up. I do need to buy a farm, though.
Yeah. Great. Rosanne, just quickly, I know Longo's in the SARS crisis really came through. Can you just talk about what you did?
Does everybody remember SARS? I think it was 2004 or 5. It just goes back to why we give. It's simply the right thing to do. So when SARS happened, York Central Hospital was one of the hospitals under, it's York Central's Mackenzie Health now. They were one of the hospitals that were under quarantine, and my cousin Joey took a call from someone at the hospital saying that they were running short of water, bottled water, for their staff and patients, and nobody would deliver to them because they were out of fear for safety. So they said, you know, could we get some water from you guys? And Joey said, sure, how much do you need? And they said, oh, maybe 100 cases. Joey said, listen, we'll send you 400 cases. And first Joey, as considerate as he is, he checked with our grocery gateway drivers. Does anybody have a problem going over to the hospital and delivering this water? Nope, our drivers stepped up too. So they dropped off the water, you know, backed up the truck, and we go on with our day. Months later, Joey gets a call from the hospital again and says, hey, listen, we never got an invoice for that water. And Joey goes, what do you mean? We sent you that water. You know, we're not charging you for that water. You guys are in the trenches for us every day. And it was just simply the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And when you ask Joey today, I say this, when you ask Joey today about the SARS story, it's not a big deal to him. He'll just shrug his shoulders and go, you got to do what you can when you can. Yeah.
Okay, Marianne, final question. Your job is 24/7. Mm-hmm. So just any quick strategies that you have to balance the different components of your life: family, career, friendship, community involvement. I mean, you could be probably somewhere every single night, I'm sure, and breakfast somewhere.
Yes. The first thing is to love what you do. I absolutely love what I do. I don't need an alarm clock. I was up at 5:30 this morning because I'm just raring to go. I wake up every day with a smile on my face. But I do say no to things, and you have to. And that's why it's so important to treat council as a team. My colleagues are a team, and they can sometimes go to events when I can't. I have an amazing staff, one of whom is here today, Victoria, and they will pitch in when I can't, because you simply can't do everything, but other people can help you. And sometimes as women, we're afraid to ask for help, or we feel like we have to do it all. We really don't. And then I carve out moments. So every night, my husband and I share a cocktail, and I tell him about what happened in my 18-hour day, and that's great for us. That's bonding time for us. And I do my very best not to take any community activities on Sundays. So I'm glad this is today.
That's great.
And you just have to claim that time for yourself, because nobody will give it to you unless you take it.
Absolutely.
A supporting spouse.
Oh, 25 years, and he's why I'm sitting here. If he hadn't encouraged me to run and said, you can do it and you have to do it, I wouldn't be here.
Okay. And final question, and then I'm going to just open it up in case anybody has a comment or a question, but then I think our panelists are going to stick around and mingle. For Cheryl, so in the last provincial election, we heard the term hallway medicine for the first time, which wasn't a very pleasant thing to think about. So is that, like, maybe just, are we done with that, or is it still happening, or?
So it's still an issue
Yeah.
at Joseph Brant Hospital and in many hospitals across Ontario. It's fundamentally driven by the demand and the overcapacity that exists within the healthcare system. So there's a lot of things that we're doing to try to end hallway medicine. Nobody likes hallway medicine. It doesn't work for staff. It doesn't work for patients. It doesn't work for the system. So we all are working judiciously to try to end hallway medicine. One of the key enablers for us, frankly, has been our redevelopment. That prior to the redevelopment, we simply had too small of a hospital to care for the needs of the growing community. And so with the new hospital, we've got a brand new tower that provides us with conventional care spaces for some of our patient populations. We are still undergoing renovations to the existing tower. We're trying to make it aesthetically similar to the tower that we've built, the new tower. But there are differences. We have limitations with the space and with the current structure of our rooms. So, our work is not done. We've got a phase 2 master plan that we are planning because we want everybody to have that same positive experience in beautiful spaces that we know makes a difference when you're recovering.
Yeah, that's good. So there's light at the end of the tunnel.
There
what
is.
You're saying. That's great. I'm going to open up to the audience. If anybody has a comment for any of our panelists or a question. Yes, we have one over here.
Good morning. My question is for Lisa. Thank you for sharing your story. It was very inspiring. I work in talent management, and so my question for you is you made reference to the culture at FedEx. What is the secret sauce that drives the engaging culture that you refer to in your organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm sure you've all heard of this quote, which is your culture will eat your strategy for breakfast. And it is so true. And so we oftentimes spend so much time on our corporate strategy, but at the end of the day, the people that execute on the strategy are the actual frontline people. They are the secret sauce. And so what we've done at FedEx from a culture perspective is we take all of our managers and above through culture training and refreshing training every single year. You just can't leave culture to say, here's our culture, and it's not a poster on a wall. So we take our managers through refresher training. We're just going through it right now, and so we live, breathe it, and sleep it. And what culture is it's your vibe at work. So we actually tell our employees, this is what you can expect from our management team. We've defined values. So at FedEx, we say our values are we're going to be a caring organization, a learning organization. We're going to have order about how we respect you and the rules and policies. And we're a results organization, but we need you to deliver. So we are constantly reinforcing to our managers what we expect them to do when they show up at work and how they are going to treat the people. So if you want to have a good culture in your company, you need to pay the most attention to the frontline management staff. And if you invest in training and tell them, here are the values we want you to show up at, then they will cascade that down. So that's what we spend a lot of time on. I would say we spend as much time talking about our culture and our action plans as much as we talk about our strategy and the results. It's 50-50. And I'm proud to say because of that, if we didn't do this, you know, we consistently rank one of the best employers in Canada. We're only one of 29 companies in Canada that is a platinum level best employer. And it's because of what we invest in our people, which are our most important assets. They're not our aircraft. Yeah, my pleasure.
That's great. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Yes, one here, and then we'll wrap up.
My question really applies to all of you, really. I work in commercial banking.
TD.
I work at a small foreign bank branch, and I work with a lot of men, and I find I have a really hard time being taken seriously. I do a lot of things that are outside of my job, like you mentioned, Lisa, and I just find it's really difficult to kind of move forward and grow. So what advice can you give, or what examples do you have or experience kind of being taken seriously by men and pushing through to succeed and grow in their own careers?
Come work at TD Bank.
I'd love to jump in on that too, and I would say two things. Don't give up. Be who you are. I can tell you that as nasty as the election was, I had 8 years of challenge as a council member, and many of you who've come to council meetings saw some of the disrespectful behavior, some of the toxic behavior on council, quite frankly, because I was a woman, I had opinion, and I said it out loud. Don't give up, but be yourself. Don't let that affect you. Be who you are. And one of the things that we heard during this campaign at doors was that people who had ever come to council and seen that behavior said, but you never responded. You know, I would have wanted to slug somebody, but you were gracious, you took the high road, you stuck to the issues, you did not get down in the muck. And a colleague said to me, you know, when you wrestle with pigs, you get some mud on you too. Don't wrestle with pigs. Don't respond that way. And so it was a long 8 years, I can say that. And it's night and day. It is night and day. And in terms of setting a culture, I truly believe in leadership by example. I believe tone is set at the top. And this city and our staff see a group of people that care deeply for each other, that are working so well together, even when we disagree. After one vote one of my colleagues sitting here, we disagreed on, I gave her a hug because she stood for what she believed in, even though I disagreed with that. So the staff are seeing that. The cultural shift in the organization in 3 months towards a much more positive tone is because of that. So I'm an optimist, stick with it, and then sometimes you gotta make a choice, right? Do I wanna stay here or come work for Anna?
Well, it has been an absolute honor to moderate this panel. You've made my job really easy. We have fantastic women in leadership and philanthropy, and we could go on for hours, but unfortunately our time is up. So thank you for this honor, and I'd like to invite Anissa Hilborn up to make some closing remarks.
Thank you, Joanne. Am I on here? Yeah, perfect. Thank you, and thank you to everyone on the panel for such a really thoughtful, inspiring conversation today about resilience, about culture, about speaking, being who you are, being authentic. And I think in today's society, sometimes that's challenging, and we're seeing that play out on the federal level right now in terms of, you know, authenticity, and I think that's really important. So thank you very, very much for being a part of today. And Joanne, thank you for leading the conversation. You did an excellent job, and really sharing your time and your insight was much appreciated. I would also like to thank everyone here, and thank you for being part of this conversation and joining us today. So again, I want to say thanks to TD for making today possible, and also for Lisa for giving us all a copy of her best-selling memoir. So thank you very much. So I get to pick the winner of the $50 gift certificate from Spencer's. Oh, So, Susan Scrow. Oh, there you go, Susan. Congratulations. So everyone here will be receiving an email survey shortly. We really would appreciate your feedback on this event. It's meaningful information for us because we can then make next year's event even better. So it's our first year, and so we would love your feedback on that piece. Please stay, continue the conversation. If you're able to, there's fresh coffee, as well as Lisa has also offered graciously to stay and personalize any books for anyone if you would like that as well. So again, on behalf of all of us, I want to thank our wonderful panelists. We have a little gift of spring. We're trying, really trying to bring spring. Sun's here, just need the ice to go away. As a thank you, a very small token of thanks for being here today. So thank you very much. So I want to wish everyone a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you for joining us.